Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Palo Alto, the online version. Please unmute yourself to say hello to each other this morning. Good morning, folks.
Oh, this is
Good
morning.
morning, folks.
Morning. Hi,
Oh, good
everybody.
morning.
Morning.
Good morning, all. Hello.
Hi.
There we go. Morning.
This morning, we welcome Reverend Millie Phillips to our pulpit for our annual Servants of Remembrance. She was ordained this last January and recently completed a year serving as the minister of the UU community of Lake County. Before retiring to study for the ministry, Millie worked in the utility industry and was a labor union activist. Today is our ritual of remembrance. If you have not already sent Amy names of your dead loved ones, it is not too late. You may post those names in the Zoom chat or email them to BJ at the email in the order of service. In both cases, please start your message with the word remember and help us out with a guide to pronunciation if needed. If you saw an earlier version of the order of service and sent names to Reverend Phillips, please resend those to BJ. Millie will not be able to see those emails during the service. You can see the order of service by following the link in the chat. There you will find useful announcements about the auction, note card writing, feedback on closed captioning, and many other church activities. And now, let us begin our service.
Thank you so much again. We light this chalice in memory of those whose flames of life have been extinguished, and in honor of you, the living, who, inspired by their legacies, are continuing to light our way. Thank you.
Our centering words each week, we draw on the many sources of our living tradition. Today's words are from Adrian Rich. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I have to cast my lot with those who, age after age, perversely, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. As we follow the sound of the bell into silence, let us become centered and fully present in this place together. Please join in as Bruce leads us in singing What Wondrous Love. The words are in your order of service.
What wondrous love is this, O my soul, O my soul? What wondrous love is this, O my soul? What wondrous love is this that brings my heart such bliss, and takes away the pain of my soul, and takes away the pain of my soul. When I was sinking down, sinking down, sinking down, when I was sinking down, sinking down, when I was sing, I will sing. With thanks unto the end, I will sing.
Wait, how come we're doing the story for all ages? What happened to Akhenaten in ancient Egypt? Now that I'm queen, I decided to interrupt our regularly scheduled programming to show everyone the Halloween costumes that UUCPA kids made for their stuffed animals. Sharpie, that you're just wearing a queen costume. You're not really the queen. Yes, I am. And I decree that we shall now show all the slides the kids sent in of their stuffies in costume. That sounds like a good idea. Let's go! It's Stasha with a princess costume. Eliza made a mummy costume with toilet paper. Look out, sassy surfer, rad. Jonathan with 2 superheroes. Here comes Ginger's Wonder Woman and Delia's Fuzzy. Which costume so far is your favorite? Well, now think carefully. Oh, Sharpie's costume is the best so far. That is the correct response. Look out, it's a COVID-masked llama. Here comes Captain Bounce to the rescue. Alex with a cowboy. William's knight in shining armor. Here's Eloise's Bam Bam Bird Keeper. Riva with a cat. And Alafia with a bat. Sharpie's really getting into that queen costume, isn't she? Let's just hope she takes it off when she goes to bed. Anyway, we want to thank all the kids who sent in photos of their stuffies in costume. Thanks, kids. The middle school neighboring religions class has awards for all the kids who sent in photos. Kids, you'll be getting your award certificate in the mail soon. And we had so much fun looking at the photos too. Yeah, it was fun seeing other UUCPA stuffies dressed up in costume. I can't wait till next year. And tune in next week to find out what happened to the gods of ancient Egypt and Akhenaten.
In the rising of the sun and in its going down, we remember them.
In the blowing of the wind and in the chill of winter, we remember them.
In the opening boughs and in the rebirth of spring, we remember them.
In the blueness of the sky and the warmth of summer, we remember them. In the rustling of the leaves and in the beauty of autumn, we remember them.
Beginning of the year and when it ends,
So long as we live to shine for they are not us as we
On this traditional day of honoring the dead and celebrating ancestors, we share this annual ritual of remembrance. This congregation has lost several members in the last year, precious individuals, personally known and deeply loved by many of you. Additionally, you have provided the names of others you are mourning today. And if you'd like to add any more names, please enter them in the chat or email them to bjw@uucpa.org. As your guest minister, I do not know those who you have lost, but there are similar losses in my communities, as there are almost always each year, and I grieve with you. And this year, death seems especially poignant. So many dying alone without their families present, some killed by increasing waves of fires and hurricanes, others murdered in the midst of a rising movement for justice. All of us more in touch with our own mortality as we try to avoid getting a potentially deadly virus and are worrying about the future of our country and of humanity itself. First, I will read the names of members of this congregation who have died in the last year. After these names are read, I will pause for a moment of reflection, and then, while staying muted, please join me in saying, "We remember them." Misao Sakamoto, Bryce Perry, Claire Shones, Sharon Zimmerman, David Harris, Ruth Hammett. We remember them.
We remember them.
Now I will read the names of others we have lost, and I hope I capture all these names that have been listed so kindly in the chat box. Chris Robles, Flora Robles, Cindy Belcher, Magdi Bulos, Joe and Dorothy English, Yunmi Fu, Jeffrey Sherman Arnold, David Goldsmith, Naomi and Ivy Iverson, Art Taylor, Rachel Taylor, T. Ivan Taylor, Siri Billick and John Billick, Shirley and Pete Peterson, Carol Peterson, Colton Peterson, Bryce Perry, and also Frank and Gail Hammaker, Alice Johnson, Tom Deharsh, Florence Coulter Haas, Cindy Belcher and Magdi Bulos again, Mary Bell and Carl Zeiss. We remember them.
We remember them.
Lastly, let us remember all the precious lives lost to police and white supremacist violence, the immigrants and refugees dying in camps on both sides of our borders, the workers dying of COVID because they cannot afford to stay home and their employers and our government refuse to act responsibly to protect them, the elderly warehoused in unsafe conditions, those denied housing dying on our streets. And sadly, the list goes on, too long for any service. I invite you now to share some names in the chat of anyone you'd like to remember who died because of the system we live in and the shameful values it promotes. Let us take a moment to write these. And while doing so, let us reflect on the lives we will be called to help save while this system continues a fatal decline. Please place names in the chat if you wish. Join me for a moment of reflection. Thank you so much. And I know there are so many more that we remember and we mourn today. We remember them.
We remember them.
Thank you.
As part of the Free Church tradition, we accept no money from any governmental body, nor do we receive money from any ecclesiastical authority in order that we shall remain free to govern ourselves. In addition to their annual pledges, each week our members and friends may choose to give an additional contribution as a public witness that we remain a free church. With our offering, we also assert that we are part of the independent web of existence. 1 week per month, your gift goes to the chosen community organization. So this month, we will take up an offering for our justice partner, American Muslim Voice, later this month. The order of service gives a QR code and a link, and also information on using text to give via Give Lively. Please give generously. If you are visiting for the first time, you are our guest. Please enjoy the music with a clear conscience.
Thank you so much again for the beautiful music provided this morning. The legacy of solidarity. Today, we remember those who have left this life before us. We remember them as they were, with strengths and weaknesses, virtues and flaws, privileges and disadvantages, tough facades or hearts on their sleeves. People like us, vulnerable, courageous, scared, maybe even a little cowardly sometimes, hesitant or overeager, bluntly honest or cautiously polite, clueless and caring. Someday, if we are able to keep our churches intact, our names will be on the annual list. Hopefully, others will remember us as people who contributed to the common good, who left a legacy of compassion, commitment, and solidarity, like those we honor today. Hopefully, they will forget, or at least forgive, the times we fell short of that legacy. Hopefully, they will have grown past the need to have perfect ancestors and mentors. Our closing hymn today will say that we are our grandmother's prayers and our grandfather's dreamings. To me, that is a wistful line, because I know only too well that not all of us have ancestors we admire. Many were not, as the hymn describes, makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. My own upbringing did not provide me with a healthy view of death or an honest and compassionate way to grieve. Not until I became a UU did I discover open communication about death and dying, freedom to grieve in our own ways and to believe what makes sense to us in the face of mortality, and above all, a community to share our joys and sorrows as we are today. If, like me, you find little in your family background to emulate, consider this. They did the best they knew how at the time. With the same upbringing, the same influences, the same privileges or lack thereof, wouldn't we be just like them? But thankfully, our ancestors are not limited to our blood relatives. Everyone leaves a legacy. And to a great extent, we can choose to follow the legacy of those who resisted our ancestors. Researching ancestry is very popular today. Perhaps we have physical traits that don't fit the stories we've been told. Or, like many of us in the US, we have been deprived of knowing our roots. Or maybe we are motivated by a kind of reckoning. We might be new to the shock and shame that many otherwise compassionate people experience when they realize that so much of what they take for granted as good has often been built on the backs of others at great cost. We want to know if our ancestors were friends or foes, oppressor or oppressed. We may seek relief. Oh, great! My ancestors were abolitionists. Or a type of guilt. Oh no, my ancestors committed genocide. A guilt we hope will push us harder to do good when we are feeling cowardly or lazy or just flat out exhausted. Personally, I don't think it matters much who were your blood ancestors. To the extent I know anything about mine, they are nothing to brag about, and then some. Am I obligated to undo the damage they caused? Yes, but not because I'm descended from them. I agree with the great Jewish philosopher, Rabbi Abraham Heschel, when he said, quote, "A few are guilty, all are responsible," unquote. So your ancestors were leaders of liberation movements? Cool. But it doesn't give you an excuse to ignore injustice today. The next few months may change history for better or worse in ways that we have not yet experienced. Not that times haven't been troubling for the vast majority all along, but now the survival of humanity as a whole is on the line, thanks to climate change in particular. Youth are rising up demanding a future no longer certain for anyone. Meanwhile, vast numbers are dying unnecessarily from COVID-19, and the more oppressed and marginalized among us have good reason to fear that even worse is yet to come. Confronting our mortality has never been easy. I'm a humanist who doesn't believe in a higher power or an afterlife, though I'd be happy if someone could prove me wrong. And I will be lucky to live another 10, 20, or 30 years at best. I'm old enough to know life is truly short, and that my options left for changing the world are pretty limited by both time and health. But the same has been true for all the generations before us. When I need inspiration, I remember those whose legacy was to resist our downward slide into oblivion, to fight for their own rights, to risk losing the acceptance of friends and families, and even their lives for the rights of others. The legacy of solidarity. They weren't perfect, but neither are we. And if there is one other thing as certain as death and taxes, it is that our descendants won't be perfect either. But as the saying goes, we are standing on our ancestors' shoulders. Would we prefer to be lying prone on the ground? I'm grateful to those who built unions so that my children grew up in a home with living wages and benefits. I'm grateful to those who fought for my right to vote, and I have never taken that right for granted, now more than ever. I am grateful to the Australian Aboriginal activist Lilla Watson for her well-known words, quote, "If you have come to help me, you are wasting your time. But if you have come because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together," unquote. Because I know my liberation is bound to others. I find meaning and value in my work and in my life as a whole. Whatever my blood ancestors, or even my most beloved spiritual and political ancestors, did or didn't do. I look around me and I see death everywhere. And not just the death that comes peacefully after a long and well-lived life. I see people struggling for their last breath under a ventilator or a knee. I see toddlers dying in cages. I see people of color gunned down in the streets. I see refugees being returned to certain death. I see suicides of despair. I see thugs ready to kill anyone who stands in their way. And that could very well mean you or me, maybe even as soon as next week. I see an economic and political system that runs on death, does not run on life. So let us honor the memory of the dead with the defiance of being fully alive. As we face a pandemic, wildfires, and rampant injustices, I remember the flawed and often contradictory labor organizer, Mother Jones. She survived the death of her husband and four little children in a yellow fever epidemic. In middle age, she lost her dressmaking business in the Great Chicago Fire. She grieved these terrible losses as deeply as any of us could. And she lived the rest of her long life fully committed to organizing unions and ending child labor. Her response to death? Pray for the dead, but fight like hell for the living. May life prevail. Thank you. While staying muted, please join in singing hymn 1051, We Are, the words to which are in your order of service.
For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We're sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We're seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
We extinguish this chalice, but not the light and warmth it provides. May our faith in what it symbolizes inspire courageous action in the days and weeks ahead.
Please stay after the benediction for virtual coffee time. You will be invited to a small group conversations in our breakout rooms, or you can stay here in the main room with me to discuss the service with me and with Reverend Phillips. If you have the latest version of Zoom, you may be able to change breakout rooms on your own. The rooms will stay open for half an hour. Please unmute yourself and turn on your video while we say our benediction together. Go out
into the world in peace.
Be of
Good courage.
fast
Hold fast to what is good. Return no one evil for evil. Strengthen the faint-hearted. Support the weak. Help the suffering. Rejoice in beauty. Speak love with word and deed. Honor all beings. Amen.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
Okay, I'm gonna Have a wonderful day.